Hello, I'm Isaiah. I am 18 right now. Um, and this is my testimony to my journey with God. Um, I became a believer probably like 5 years ago. I had a small relationship with God. And what I mean with that is I didn't really understand who God was. I was just kind of, his name was spoken around me a lot when I was growing up, but I only really ever made a relationship with him and let him into me like 5 years ago. Um, yeah, when I first was introducing him, I before then I kind of had um, a lot of questions, like in a couple years before I came to Aletheia, where I basically was just confused on what things meant and why things were. Um, and yeah, before I asked the questions or before I had God in my life, I was just kind of a um, hermit crab of a person. Um, the only interactions I ever really had with people were lashing out to them, um, and that was about it. That's all I really offered people. Um, and then I started asking myself questions of why I was doing that, and logically, I was like, why would I want to do that? You know, if I was trying to, be good, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I just kind of was like withholding for a while and doing pretty much anything. Like I was just kind of hermit crabbing to another level where I was just like not doing anything with myself. Um, and then yeah, I came here because parents were like, "Oh, we should try church again." And then I was like, "Okay." And then we did. And then I met everyone here and how crazy they are, and it started, making me ask questions about why they were so different, why they cared about each other, why they were trying to be, like what I saw was good. Like I saw that those things were good, and I saw they were good because people were in productive places and growing, and they were like, in a community that was like um, was beautiful in different ways that I didn't really understand fully. Um, and so yeah, I started asking those questions, and a big person, and I'm sure a lot of these stories is Josh talking to me, and I think what really got me interested in the beginning was just kind of the logical side of it, like if you like thinking through like how the world works and how much like God fits into that, like in everything, like that really got me kind of interested in like I don't know, it was kind of like learning about like a conspiracy theory or something. And it's like, oh, this fits with this, so this makes sense with this. And I just was intrigued by that, like in my brain. Um, but I didn't really think of it still in the way where it's just like life changing. I thought of it as like an interesting subject, and these were like interesting people, like a book club or something. Um, but yeah, and then as it was continued to talk about, I like thought of it as like a cool thing that people do, but I didn't really think of it as my relationship with God. Like I was like not thinking about those things. And then I had a whole big conversation with Josh and Michaela and some other people, and um, yeah, it was basically like, what about you? Like, where are you at with God? What are you trying to do? Like, why are you interested in those things? Like, why do you care about, learning about God? Why are you here? And, from there, it stemmed off from me realizing, that the only truth that could be is God, and that He's not something that is cool to talk about, or He's not, you know, a cool like theory. Like He is the truth. He goes before everything else. Like in those things, how I was thinking about before that transition was He was an addition onto my life. Like this was my life. This is what I did, and then God is there too. But it's like that's not what it is at all. Like what really made me have a completely different process was just that God was the truth, and then everything else needed to come after that. Um, it took me a long time to figure out that concept, and it's something that I struggled with for a long time, and I still do sometimes, you know? Like, I, in communication or different things, prioritizing other things over, like, over things that actually I need to be prioritizing, like being a leader in things and, um, like, maneuvering myself with God in mind first, like, doing what He would want me to do. Um, that's something that I've struggled with for a long time, and, I have a lot of my struggles, but a lot of them stem from that. It's just not having Him at the forefront of my mind, um, getting distracted by worldly things that don't really matter. But it's a lot easier to obviously to um, be have things in priority when you do know the truth of God. And since I've gotten that, like me being able to um, like better talk to people, better like be in relationship has obviously improved exponentially. Like I have relationships with people, so that's really cool, and I work at those things, and that's only possible because of my relationship with God. Yeah, but there has been a fair share of struggles in that. Like I just said, my just getting over the idea of putting God as the priority. Like with that comes with um, like my monster. Like I am a liar. That's like one of my main issues. Is I want to pretend the world is a certain way. Like I want to, when I'm not sure what to do or how to maneuver myself, I like at times have and like do still like not. It's not as much a problem anymore because I'm actively working on it now and I'm being honest with myself about my dishonesty. But it is still something that like is a big struggle for me is battling that want to pretend like nothing's happening, to pretend like I haven't seen the things I have or I haven't done the things I've done. Like, but in the reality of things, like when you're honest with those things, and I'm realizing this more and more, like you're actually much more free than you would be if you were to just pretend like they don't exist. Because to put it in a box is a lot more work. Well, in some ways, it's a lot more work than having that like beast to tame. Like instead of just trying to shove him over here, like you confront him or her. gotta get inclusive, nowadays it's 2021 after all. Anyway, um, yeah. So I would say the biggest thing for me to like be withholding in my relationship with God is like my faults, like not wanting to admit in a weird way. Like it's weird to say it out loud. Like my faults is not admitting my faults, but um, yeah, it's like not giving myself fully to God in the respect of like not admitting and being honest with what I am. Trying to hide under the bushes or whatever, and it's just never. It's just not even close to like eluding anyone, and yeah, I'm coming to realize that again. Yeah, I think in my journey, like a lot of the things that I've learned have been, um, sorry, that was a weird sentence. I have learned a lot in my journey in the past 5 years, like more than I've learned any in the rest of my life by far. Like I could pick 1 year and I would have learned more than I've learned in the rest of my life, outside of being in like a godly, with a godly worldview, with God involved in my life. Um, and I think the biggest takeaway in my journey is really um, to use what God has given you. Like when I wasn't being honest with myself, when I wasn't letting myself work through the struggles that I wasn't using any of the resources that I had. I wasn't using my support system to help me get past those things. I wasn't using like scripture to reflect on those things and to figure out what was going on. Like, it's wasted time when you're not working towards those things, when you're just, you know, often gumdrop gumdrop island and you're not thinking about those things. Like, nothing's moving. Even if things are like moving in other areas, like, what is really need to happen is you need to repent of that. And when you're not doing that, you're just sitting around. And that's, you know, that's the worst thing you can do, is just not move. Like, without conviction at all, to choose to just not move is no. If I saw someone, which I have seen, some like people that are working through the same process that I went through, if I saw someone that was, you know, going through that same process, that just was not honest with themselves and what they were, or how God valued them, like, I would say you need to uncover that and start talking about that as soon as possible, because it's going to be a hard journey. Um, like, I'm not going to tell you it's not, but in the end, like, you're going to be so grateful that you took that step. And like, I feel a lot of the time, like, going back to that, like, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, like, whatever. Like, there are moments where I think that, but it's just not true. Like, if I were to not brought myself and been vulnerable, I would have done nothing with my life. I would have been a hermit for the rest of my life. Like, I would have just, you know, like, beat people up for looking at me the wrong way, and calling people terrible things, and hurting people for no reason, because I just didn't want to talk about my own self. Like, that's what I would have been, and that would have been my legacy. If I had a wife or kids, like, that's what I would have passed to them. Is like, screw everybody, and that's it. But because I took that and I gave that up to God, now I'm able to move forward. I'm able to do something with my life. Like, my calling towards, you know, helping people is like helping people, like, in the community, and going into the army to get those skills, and then coming out and going to the police academy, and then going from the police academy to, like, anyway, through that process, like, I never would have been able to do that. I wouldn't be able to consider that, because I was on the opposite side of the pendulum. Like, I was trying to actively do the opposite of that. Without that strength in God, I wouldn't have even considered that. Like, that wouldn't even been a thing. And what I've accomplished so far, like, in working with the men, like, improving our church building, working in the youth ministry, working with the music, like, being a leader in worship, being a, like, a soon to be husband, being like a father in ways to, like, a lot of the kids, like, being a man to, like, my little cousins, being a man in my family, whether it's, you know, my immediate family or my, like, surrounding family, like my aunts, I think of my uncles, my grandmas, like, that person, that support that I gave would be non-existent without God. Like, that is kind of scary to think about. Like, if I didn't take that step, and if those people, like, don't take those steps when they're in those places, like, you're missing out on such beautiful fruit that you can give. Like, you're taking that away from God when you're not doing that. You're thinking about what you can do, and you're saying, I don't want to do that. I want to take that for myself. And there's just so much to give. There's so much to give. Always be moving forward to God. That is kind of a general summary of my journey, I suppose. I could go into the details of day to day or random things I've discovered, my interests and my love for the world. But in the end, what really matters is how God informs that, and, you know, that's that journey. God being in my life and showing me why any of it mattered. The why is much more important than the what. That's it.